in the conference or a customer services representative.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand by. Your meeting is about to begin. Good afternoon, and welcome to the University of Toronto webinar. Please note that the lines will be in the listen-only mode. And I would like to turn the meeting over to your host, Vivek Voora. Please go ahead.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the First Nations Carbon Collaborative webinar series. Today we will focus on financing carbon projects. We have 2 to 3 dynamic speakers that will share with us their insights on the topic. My name is Vivek Voora, and I will be moderating the webinar today. I work as a project manager with the International Institute for Sustainable Development, and I've been actively working on the First Nations Carbon Collaborative since its inception. Before we hear from our speakers, I should give you some background on the First Nations Carbon Collaborative. The collaborative was established by the International Institute for Sustainable Development, the Center for Indigenous, Environmental and Resources, and 3 First Nations, the Carrier-Sakani Tribal Council, Poplar River First Nations, and the Cleecho Nation. As part of the project, we decided to pull together a webinar series on various topics related to First Nations and carbon markets. The goal here is to share information on carbon emissions trading and how it impacts Aboriginal communities. We also completed a couple of background reports, which can be found on our respective websites. Before we get into it, we also should spend some time to extend our appreciation to our funders and supporters for this initiative. The Indian Northern Affairs BC Capacity Initiative Program, the New Relationship Trust Fund, BC First Nations Energy and Mining Council, and the University of Toronto Centre for Environment, who are hosting this webinar on their system. And without this kind support, we would not have been able to host this webinar series today. So the agenda for the webinar series can be found on a link that was just sent to you on the chat panel. So if you want to take a look at the overall agenda for the entire webinar series, it can be found there. And again, the topic today is carbon financing, and our speakers will be Susan McLean, Barbara Hendrickson, and Doug Tingey. And without further ado, I guess we'll start. So I just want to introduce Susan. Susan, as founding principal of Green Edge Capital Solutions, Susan is working with a range of stakeholders, including growth companies, investors, industry, and government, to identify and create value in the transition to a greener economy. Prior to this role, Susan acted as Regional Director for Sustainable Development Technology Canada, opening the Toronto office in 2008, where she was responsible for working with SDTC portfolio companies, facilitating their path to market through targeted technology adoption and follow-on funding programs, as well as coordinating with other government funding programs. Before SDTC, Susan worked as the Toronto Stock Exchange for several years, holding a number of management roles. In her final role, she was directing TSX Group activities relating to environmental finance and initiated a clean tech listing sector focus. Susan holds a Bachelor of Arts from McGill University and earned the Chartered Financial Analyst designation in 2000 and a master's degree in economics in 2008. So without further ado, I'll let Susan take it away.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Vivek. I will just get my presentation up here, I think. Okay, there we go. So at any rate, I'm pleased to be presenting, and what I'm talking about here is sort of the clean tech finance. So as many of you will be aware, clean tech is very closely related to carbon because clean tech or clean technology, green technology, environmental technologies, it can go by many different names, is sort of an underwriter for a lot of the abatement potentials and as well for a lot of the offset potentials credentials in the carbon space. So from that perspective, I'm going to talk about what the clean tech finance situation looks like in Canada, and present some of the challenges, some of the opportunities, and some of the sort of the go-to places to look for financing, and what the situations are in those different sectors. So on to the first slide. Clean tech covers a broad range of traditional industries. So it's really sort of the greening or retooling of an entire economy. And on this wheel chart, you can see I've laid out the different subsectors of clean tech. So it can really be considered sort of a motley crew of different industries. So we've got biofuels, biochemicals, power generation, and by that I mean renewable power generation, so your typical solar, wind, tidal, all of the different types of renewable. And from clean tech, what we're really talking about there is the technologies that are improving and enabling those. So from a clean tech perspective, we're not as much talking about traditional hydro or wind, where those technologies are very proven. These are the types of enabling technologies that go into improving these overall renewable technologies. Energy infrastructure is referring to sort of smart grid type technologies. Energy efficiency are the types of technologies that are really driving the green building movement. So different types of lighting efficiencies, glass efficiencies, building structures, what have you. Process efficiency and abatement, that refers to traditional industrial abatement opportunities. Recycling and waste, fairly obvious. Remediation generally refers to sort of brownfield redevelopment, transportation, and then water and wastewater. So most of these have a carbon focus, or either directly or indirectly. I mean, some of the water technologies not as much, but even a lot of the water technologies, wherever water is moving, it's being pumped, and that requires a lot of energy. So a lot of times when we're looking at water efficiency, there is an indirect sort of greenhouse gas mitigation there as well. One of the first things we look at when we talk about clean technology is how sort of the technology development side of things. And on this slide here, you look at, on the far left-hand side, we have fundamental research. That's typically done, in universities. Applied research, that may still be done within the academic sphere. Then the next vertical, the technology development and demonstration, is where you're taking technologies out of the lab and testing them out in a real market situation, but still typically not at scale. So these are sort of your pilot or your demonstration projects. From there, you would go to product commercialization and market development. These are sort of first sales and getting these technologies into the market. And obviously, market entry and market volume is where you're really scaling your sales and sort of taking off from that standpoint. So what you see here are the traditional sources of capital that are funding these different pieces along the development continuum. And this slide is intended to show that there's a real gap at the technology development and demonstration stage. And this is not unique to Canada. Just about anywhere where they develop technologies, there's always a gap there. And I think in Canada it's probably a little more aggravated than it is in other regions. Also, what you can see at the bottom here is the funding that has gone into it. And what you see, these are 2009 numbers, but I don't think it's changed dramatically, is that from both industry and government, you have about $30 billion going into the fundamental and applied research. So we have a lot of support that's going into the innovation. But then at the technology development, demonstration, and product commercialization side, you have far less. And the number I have here is $1 billion from the VC. That's not the whole picture. There's angel financing that's not captured there. The venture market, the TSX venture would probably be contributing about another $1 billion into that, and then there's industry as well. So If you were to round them out and say about $5 billion is going in at that side, it's still far less than is going in at the earlier stage, and it makes it a big challenge because the technology development and demonstration is actually, and specifically with clean tech, it can be a very capital-intensive process, and so it does leave a big gap. Moving on to the next slide, I thought I would just, again, sort of lay out at these different stages of development